APA format, crediting sources, a tutorial prepared for Florida Technical College students. Why and when do we need to cite? A critical part of the writing process is helping others place your contribution, that is, your ideas, in context by citing researchers who influenced you. When do we need to cite? When others' ideas have influenced your work. Citing implies you have read the work, so be sure you have read the sources you are citing. Citing and acknowledging the sources you used also help you strengthen your research because you're evidencing that you have done your homework. And lastly, keep in mind that the amount of sources we include in our papers will depend on the extent of the work and its requirements, or even more, an instructor may ask for a minimum amount of references. We have learned how to avoid plagiarism in our work. It is very important to keep in mind that writers do not present the work of others as if it were their own work. Notice how this information is presented. It has quotation marks, it's showing the source, the year it was published, but more specifically is showing the page number. This is to reference the publication manual of the American Psychological Association. To avoid plagiarism, make sure you credit each source you are using by quoting, paraphrasing, or summarizing the contents you are using. And a great idea to consider is to create notes where you identify the idea with the source. This is to remember the ideas you are considering of including in your work. Quoting. We quote when we use the idea of a source verbatim. That means word by word. We also need to acknowledge the source by including the author, the year it was published, and the page number. Now, if we are using an online source that does not have page numbers, then we need to specify the paragraph number. If the quotation has fewer than 40 words, then it can be included within your discussion. However, if it takes longer than 40 words, then it needs to be presented in block format. Last but not least, limit the use of quotations. Some people ask for about 5 to 10% of the paper to have quotations maximum. This is because it affects the voice of the writer by using other people's wording. Also, it limits the critical thinking ideal of not being able to put into our own words what the source we are using is presenting. Here we are seeing multiple ways that we can use to cite our sources. Notice how we use the writer's surname followed by the year of publication in parentheses. This is done like so as a shortcut for the reader. If the reader wants to access the source, then she or he goes back to the reference page, looks for Smith 2015, and there she or he will find the bibliographical information. The first section shows how to introduce the source in our discussion. The later version shows how to conclude it. We will be seeing examples that demonstrate how to use these. Here we have an example of a section of research that contains someone else's ideas word by word. This example shows how to include the verbatim within our discussion since the quotation has fewer than 40 words. I would like to point at the double quotation that is being shown. We have the beginning of the quotation here and in here, and there's also a quotation within a quotation. When we have something like this, we only use a single quote instead of the two quotes. Also, notice how we are acknowledging the source by mentioning the authors at the end of the quotation and presenting the information within parentheses. If completing a sentence, then we need to place the period after the end parentheses, not before, after. This is an example of a block quotation. This happens when we are using 40 words or more verbatim. We introduce the source and then indent the quotation. Notice how this type of quotation does not carry quotation marks. We don't have them here or here. This is because the indentation is letting the reader know it is actually verbatim. Also notice that unlike our previous example, we close the sentence with a period and then provide the parenthetical citation with the year and the page number. Paraphrasing is another method we can use to cite another person's work or ideas. When we paraphrase, we are stating the idea from the original source in our own words. This is usually done at the sentence level, and it usually varies. It could take you 1 or 2 sentences to deliver the same message as the original. Just like working with quotations, we need to acknowledge the author, the year, and the page or paragraph number where our reader might find the information. Paraphrasing can be used more freely as you are using your own voice to present the information, while presenting or demonstrating that you understand the meaning and significance of the ideas you are using. Summarizing is the last referencing technique we can use in our paper. Similar to paraphrasing, we are using our own words, but we are providing the main idea of the work we are referencing. When providing a summary, we only need to provide the author and the year. This is because we might summarize a whole article in just a few sentences. This paragraph presents all 3 instances of citation. What's in yellow shows a quotation with the author's name, publication year, and page number. What's in aqua presents an example of summarizing with the authors and is showing 2 different sources, Nohan, 1992, Cohen, Mannion, and Morrison, 2007. What's in pink shows a paraphrase of the original. The distinction between a paraphrase and a summary is in the inclusion of page number or lack thereof. We have mentioned and demonstrated how to acknowledge our sources within the discussion of our paper. Now, these shortcuts, that is the use of author, year, and page, need to appear on the references page because we might use different sources in our paper, which include books, magazines, academic journals, web pages, websites, etc. The construction of each one will be slightly different. It is very important to learn how to organize these as reference generators, which are usually available on the web or even in Word documents, might not present accurate organization. Overall, each reference entry must aim at presenting the author's name, date the work was published, title of the work, publication data such as city, publishing company, etc. Here we see an example of bibliographical information of a book. We see the writer's surname, followed by a comma. The name is in initials, period. The year it was published is within parentheses, period. The title of the book is in italics, period. Then we have the city and state it was published, followed by a colon, and then last but not least, the publishing house. The basic format that each reference entry has is double-spaced, indent second line and subsequent lines, organized in alphabetical order, and is usually done by author, lists all authors, italicize the journal or magazine title and the volume number, and italicize book title. This is an example of a completed reference page. Notice how each entry is double-spaced. Entries are arranged in alphabetical order. Second line is always indented, and how each entry looks differently. This is why it is so important to access the website or the manual itself. Since this is a screenshot of a paper, notice as well how some sections of the entry are green lined, like this one, or red lined. In this case, it does not mean your entry is wrong. It simply means that the system is not recognizing it as correct. You don't need to mind this. As long as you follow APA format, you will do well. The publication manual of the American Psychological Association has listed 77 different types of references entry. Examples of these are books, periodicals, videos, and electronic sources. Within each one, you'll see different ways to acknowledge and present your reference entry. Because of these differences in formatting each source, we recommend you to go to the APA style website to see more examples and tutorials on how to present these. Another good option is to buy the publication manual for easy reference. This is the end of the tutorial. Now please go and take the plagiarism quiz to evidence what you have learned.